Man helps crying tiger out of a trap. What happens next is shocking. The metallic taste in my mouth reminded me that I had been running for hours. My camera bag, once pristine and organized, now hangs torn and muddy from my shoulder. I hadn't planned on getting lost in one of the most dangerous forests, but a wrong turn while tracking a rare species of bird had led me deep into uncharted territory. The setting sun painted the canopy in shades of amber, a beautiful sight that would have made for a perfect photograph if I weren't fighting for survival. My name is Alex Chen, and until today, I thought I understood wildlife. 15 years as a photographer had taught me to respect nature's boundaries, to observe but never interfere. That was before I heard the sound that would change my life forever, a cry so filled with pain and desperation that it seemed to pierce through the very fabric of the jungle's symphony. At first, I mistook it for a human scream. The sound came again, weaker this time, more like a whimper. Against every instinct that screamed at me to walk away, I found myself moving toward it. The dense undergrowth scratched at my arms as I pushed through, following the increasingly faint sounds of distress. What I found in that clearing made me shocked. A magnificent tiger, its orange and black coat gleaming despite the fading light, lay trapped in what looked like an industrial-grade snare. The metal wire had cut deep into its hind leg. But it wasn't the injury that stopped me in my tracks. It was the tiger's eyes. They weren't filled with the feral rage I expected from a trapped predator. Instead, they held something I had never seen in a wild animal before, a profound, almost human-like despair. The big cat's chest heaved with labored breaths, and I could see it was growing weaker by the minute. Poachers' traps were designed to be cruel. This one was slowly tightening with every movement the tiger made to free itself. Without help, the animal would either bleed out or succumb to exhaustion. I knew I should document this, report it to the forest authorities, and let nature take its course. That's what my training dictated. That's what any sane person would do. But as I raised my camera, the tiger's eyes met mine, and something inexplicable passed between us. In that moment, I saw beyond the fearsome predator to something more, a living being in pain, asking for help in the only way it could. "I must be out of my mind," I muttered, setting down my camera bag. The tiger's ears flicked toward the sound of my voice, but it made no aggressive movement. Either it was too weak to attack, or it somehow understood my intentions. I wasn't sure which possibility terrified me more. Moving with deliberate slowness, I took out my multi-tool and began approaching the trap. The tiger watched my every move, its massive head following my progression. Each step closer made my heart thunder louder in my chest. At this distance, one swipe of those paws could easily take my head off. "Easy there, big guy," I whispered, though my voice trembled. "I'm going to help you, but you need to stay still." Whether it was my tone or its own exhaustion, the tiger remained motionless as I knelt beside it. The stench of blood and fear was overwhelming at this distance, and I could hear the big cat's ragged breathing. The trap's mechanism was complex, designed to prevent exactly what I was attempting. My hands shook as I examined it, aware that one wrong move could either further injure the tiger or free it while I was within striking distance. Sweat dripped into my eyes, and I blinked it away, not daring to move my hands to wipe my face. Time seemed to stretch like honey dripping from a jar. The jungle grew quieter around us, as if holding its breath. The only sounds were the tiger's labored breathing, the metallic clicks of the trap as I worked, and my own pounding heart. Then something unexpected happened. As I struggled with a particularly stubborn spring, I felt something warm and rough against my arm. The tiger had extended its neck and was gently pressing its nose against my skin. Not biting, not attacking, just touching, as if offering encouragement. The gesture nearly made me lose my grip on the tool. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, I finally understood how the trap worked. "This is going to hurt," I warned the tiger, meeting its intelligent gaze. "But it's the only way." With a final adjustment, I triggered the release mechanism. The trap snapped open with a harsh clang that echoed through the clearing. The tiger let out a roar of pain that made my ears ring, but still didn't attack. Instead, it slowly pulled its injured leg free, leaving behind dark stains on the forest floor. I scrambled backward, putting distance between us, but the tiger didn't move immediately. It turned its massive head toward me, and what happened next would haunt my dreams for years to come. The great beast slowly blinked at me, in that way cats do to show trust, then struggled to its feet. Our eyes locked one final time, and I saw something there that defied explanation, a glimmer of intelligence, of understanding, perhaps even gratitude. Then, with a slight limp but surprising speed, it melted into the jungle's shadows, leaving me alone with my thundering heart and the bloody trap. As I collected my camera bag with trembling hands, I noticed something odd about the trap that I hadn't seen before. Etched into the metal was a symbol, a curved snake eating its own tail. It seemed deliberate, almost like a signature. I took several photos of it, thinking it might help identify the poachers responsible. Little did I know, that symbol would become significant in ways I couldn't imagine, and my encounter with the tiger was just the beginning of something far more extraordinary and dangerous than I could have ever anticipated. 3 days after my encounter with the tiger, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in my universe. My editor at National Geographic was thrilled with the photos I'd managed to capture of rare birds before getting lost, but I hadn't told her about the tiger. How could I explain what had happened in that clearing without sounding like I'd lost my mind? I had reported the trap to the local forest authorities, carefully omitting the part about my close encounter with its victim. They seemed oddly uninterested in the snake symbol I'd photographed, dismissing it as random vandalism. Their lack of concern only deepened my unease. Instead of heading back to civilization as planned, I decided to extend my stay in the jungle. I told myself it was to document the illegal poaching activities, but deep down, I knew I was hoping for another glimpse of the tiger. I wanted proof that it had survived its injury, that our interaction had been real and not some stress-induced hallucination. The jungle felt different now. Every rustle of leaves made me turn my head, expecting to see golden eyes watching me. I'd wake up in my camping hammock at night, certain I'd heard padding footsteps nearby, only to find nothing but moonlight filtering through the canopy. On the 4th day, while following what looked like recent tiger tracks, I stumbled upon something that made my photographer's heart race. A clearing filled with peacocks. These weren't the common green peacocks, but the extremely rare Germain's peacocks, thought to be extinct in this region. I set up my camera equipment with trembling hands, knowing these photos could be the highlight of my career. I was so focused on adjusting my lens that I didn't notice the change in the jungle's atmosphere. The sudden silence should have warned me. In the wild, silence means danger. The attack came from behind, announced by a deep, guttural growl that made every hair on my body stand on end. I turned slowly, already knowing I would face something terrible. A sloth bear stood on its hind legs less than 20 feet away, its massive body casting a shadow over me. People often think bears are cute, but there's nothing cute about a sloth bear up close. They're one of most aggressive predators, known to attack humans without provocation. This one was huge, probably around 7 feet tall when standing, with powerful arms ending in curved claws that could disembowel a person with one swipe. My camera equipment lay between me and the tree I needed to climb to escape. The bear seemed to sense my thoughts, dropping to all fours and moving to cut off my retreat. Its lips pulled back to reveal yellow teeth, and strings of saliva dripped from its mouth. "Hey there, big fellow," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady while slowly backing away. "Let's not do anything hasty." The bear responded with another growl, this one deeper, more threatening. I had my bear spray, but it was in my back pocket. Any sudden movement to reach for it would likely trigger an attack. My mind raced through everything I knew about sloth bears. They had poor eyesight but an excellent sense of smell. They were surprisingly fast despite their bulky appearance, and they were known to be especially aggressive during mating season. The bear took a step forward. I took a step back. My foot caught on a root, and I stumbled slightly. That tiny movement was all it took. The bear charged. Time seemed to slow down. I could see every detail with horrible clarity: the mud caked in its fur, the gleam of its claws, the darkness of its open mouth. I knew I was about to die, and my brain helpfully informed me that at least it would make a great story. Wildlife photographer gets too close to nature. Then something extraordinary happened. A streak of orange and black erupted from the undergrowth like a bolt of lightning. The air filled with an earth-shattering roar that seemed to make the very ground vibrate. My tiger, and somehow I knew with absolute certainty it was the same one I had saved, had launched itself between me and the charging bear. The two predators collided with a force that took my breath away. The tiger, despite its recent injury, moved with incredible speed and precision. It was smaller than the bear but clearly the more skilled fighter. While the bear relied on brute force and random swipes of its powerful arms, the tiger's attacks were calculated, precise, and devastatingly effective. I should have run. Any sane person would have used this distraction to escape. Instead, I found myself fumbling for my camera, driven by some insane professional instinct to document this once-in-a-lifetime encounter. The fight was brutal but surprisingly short. The tiger managed to get behind the bear, using its powerful jaws to clamp down on the base of the bear's neck. The bear tried to shake it off, but the tiger held firm, its powerful body wrapped around its opponent like a living vice. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the bear finally broke free and retreated, leaving behind tufts of fur. As the bear's crashing departure faded into the distance, the tiger turned to face me. Blood matted its fur in several places, but none of the wounds appeared serious. Its injured back leg, I noticed with relief, seemed to have healed well. Our eyes met, and that same inexplicable connection I had felt in the clearing flowed between us. The tiger's chest heaved with exertion, but its gaze was steady, intelligent, almost protective. Then it did something that defied everything I knew about wild animals. It sat down, still watching me, as if making sure I was truly unharmed. "Thank you," I whispered, though the words felt inadequate. The tiger's ear flicked in response to my voice, and for a moment, I could have sworn I saw something like amusement in its eyes. Then its head snapped up, ears pivoting towards something I couldn't hear. Without a sound, it rose and melted back into the jungle, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and a memory card full of impossible photographs. As I collected my scattered equipment, I noticed something that made me shocked. There, carved fresh into the bark of a nearby tree, was the same symbol I had seen on the trap, the snake eating its own tail. But this time, there was something different about it. The snake had been modified, its scales now forming what looked like words in a script I didn't recognize. Someone was watching me, and somehow, they knew about my encounter with the tiger. The question was, were they friend or foe? That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the tiger launching itself at the bear, moving with impossible precision, as if it had calculated every possible outcome before acting. Wild animals don't behave that way. They don't show up at exactly the right moment to save someone. They definitely don't stick around afterward to make sure you're okay. I pulled out my laptop and began reviewing the photos I'd taken during the fight. Most were blurry. Trying to photograph two apex predators fighting while terrified isn't great for steady hands. But a few shots were crystal clear, and they showed something strange. In every clear photo of the tiger's face, its eyes seemed to glow with an unnatural blue light, like distant stars in an orange sky. I checked my camera settings, thinking it might be some quirk of the flash, but I hadn't used the flash. Besides, animal eyes typically reflected green or red in photos, never blue. A twig snapped in the darkness beyond my camp. I froze, listening intently. The jungle's nighttime chorus of insects and frogs continued uninterrupted, which meant whatever was out there was moving carefully enough not to disturb the local wildlife. Another snap, closer this time, followed by the soft sound of padded feet on leaves. I reached for my flashlight but stopped myself. Something told me I didn't want to shine a light on whatever was approaching. Instead, I sat perfectly still, barely breathing, as the footsteps circled my camp. They paused near my food storage, and I heard the rustle of something being dragged away. When dawn broke, I found the remains of a freshly finished deer about 50 feet from my camp. It had been partially eaten, but plenty of meat remained, more than enough to feed a grown man. It was fresh, probably from that night, and the bite marks were unmistakably from a tiger. "Are you bringing me breakfast?" I asked the empty jungle, feeling slightly ridiculous. A bird called in the distance, almost like an answer. Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. Every morning, I'd find fresh kills near my camp, always partially eaten, always positioned where I could easily find them. I started marking their locations on my GPS, and they formed a rough circle around my camping area, almost like a protective boundary. But the tiger wasn't the only one watching me. I began noticing other signs: broken branches that hadn't been broken by animals, cigarette butts that weren't mine, and most disturbing of all, more of those snake symbols, each slightly different from the last. Someone was following me, studying me, perhaps trying to understand my connection with the tiger. One afternoon, while photographing a family of langurs, I found something that changed everything. Hidden in a hollow tree was a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. The cover bore the now familiar snake symbol, but this one was older, worn smooth by time. Inside, the pages were filled with drawings and text in multiple languages, some I recognized as Sanskrit and Tamil, others I'd never seen before. Most of the text was indecipherable, but scattered throughout were English translations. What I could read told an incredible story. According to the journal, there existed an ancient order of mystics who believed certain animals possessed human souls, souls that had chosen to be reborn as animals to protect the natural world. These creatures were called guardians, and they were said to form powerful bonds with chosen humans. "This is crazy," I muttered, but even as I said it, I thought of the tiger's blue eyes in my photos, its seemingly impossible understanding of human gestures, its precise and calculated movements. The journal mentioned specific signs of a guardian: unnatural eye color, intelligent behavior, and most importantly, a protective instinct toward their chosen human companion. As if responding to my thoughts, a deep rumble echoed through the trees. I looked up from the journal to find the tiger standing at the edge of the clearing, watching me with those impossible blue eyes. This time, I wasn't afraid. I stayed perfectly still as it approached, moving with fluid grace despite its massive size. The tiger stopped a few feet away and sat down, curling its tail around its paws like a house cat. In the afternoon light, I could see patterns in its fur that I hadn't noticed before, markings that looked almost like the script from the journal. "So," I said softly, "are you one of these guardians?" The tiger's ear flicked, and it made a sound somewhere between a purr and a growl. Then it did something that made my heart stop. It slowly, deliberately nodded its head. A crash in the undergrowth shattered the moment. The tiger was on its feet instantly, positioning itself between me and the sound. Through the trees, I caught a glimpse of movement, a human figure ducking out of sight. The tiger let out a warning roar that seemed to shake the very air, and I heard the sound of someone running away. But they'd left something behind. Lying on the ground was a piece of paper, weighted down with a small stone. On it was drawn the snake symbol, but this version was different. The snake was broken in half, its severed ends dripping what looked like blood. Below it was a message in English. "The old ways must die. You cannot stop what is coming." The tiger growled low in its throat, and I noticed it was staring not at where the figure had disappeared, but at something in the distance, something I couldn't see. Its muscles were tense, its entire body radiating alarm. Whatever was coming, my guardian clearly sensed it was far worse than a single mysterious messenger. I looked down at the journal in my hands, then back at the tiger. "I guess we're in this together now, aren't we?" The tiger turned its blue gaze to me, and in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty that my life had become entangled with something far older and more mysterious than I could have imagined. The simple act of freeing a trapped animal had drawn me into an ancient conflict, and I had a feeling the next few days would determine not just my fate, but perhaps the fate of these sacred guardians themselves. The journal's warnings kept me awake that night. According to its weathered pages, for every guardian, there existed a group dedicated to destroying it, the Severance, they were called. They believed that by finishing a guardian, they could harvest its power, stealing the ancient magic for themselves. The broken snake symbol was their mark, their promise of destruction. I was in my hammock, reading the journal by flashlight, when my satellite phone buzzed. The sound was so unexpected in the jungle's darkness that I nearly dropped both the phone and the journal. The number was unfamiliar, but the call was coming through despite my terrible reception, something that should have been impossible this deep in the forest. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Mr. Chen." The voice was deep, heavily accented, and somehow familiar though I couldn't place it. "You have something that belongs to us. Who is this? The journal you found, it wasn't meant for you. You're interfering with matters you don't understand." A chill ran down my spine. "How did you know about the journal? How are you even calling me out here?" The voice chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "We have ways. Just as we have ways of dealing with those who meddle in our affairs. Your guardian can't protect you forever." The line went dead, leaving me with nothing but jungle sounds and a growing sense of dread. I quickly packed my essential gear: camera, journal, satellite phone, and emergency supplies. Whatever was coming, I needed to be ready to move. I had just finished packing when I heard it, the soft click of a safety being disengaged. The sound came from behind me, where the jungle was darkest. "Hands where we can see them," a different voice commanded. "No sudden movements." I raised my hands slowly, turning to face the voice. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, dressed in black tactical gear. Each carried a high-powered rifle equipped with what looked like tranquilizer darts. Their faces were obscured by masks bearing the broken snake symbol. "The journal," the leader demanded, extending his hand. "Now." "It's in my bag," I said, nodding toward my backpack. "Along with some interesting photos of your handiwork." "Those traps you set? I've documented all of them." The leader tilted his head. "You think threats will help you? We've been doing this for centuries. Before there were cameras, before there were laws protecting these abominations. The Guardians are an affront to the natural order. Their power belongs to humanity." A low growl echoed through the trees. The hunters immediately shifted formation, backs to each other, scanning the darkness. "Your pet won't help you tonight," the leader said, though I noticed his hand trembling slightly on his rifle. "We've prepared for it. These darts contain enough tranquilizer to down 10 normal tigers. 1 hit, and your guardian sleeps forever." As if in response, something large moved through the undergrowth to my right. The hunters tracked the movement with their rifles. Then another rustle came from the left. The tiger was circling us, creating confusion. "Clever beast," one of the hunters muttered. "But not clever enough." He was wrong. The tiger was far cleverer than they realized. While they were distracted by the movement in the bushes, I noticed something that made my heart race: the tiger's tracks in the soft earth, leading away from the sounds. Whatever was making those noises, it wasn't the Guardian. The realization hit me just as all hell broke loose. A pack of wild boars, apparently disturbed by something, or someone, burst from the undergrowth, charging through our group in blind panic. The hunters scattered, firing wildly into the chaos. I dove for my backpack, but the leader was faster. His boot caught me in the ribs, sending me sprawling. "Enough games?" he snarled, pressing his rifle against my head. "Call off your guardian, or I end this now." "I can't call it off," I gasped. "It's not my pet. It's not anyone's pet. That's what you people don't understand." "You're right," he said. "I don't understand. And I don't need to." He pulled a radio from his vest. "Team 2, move in. Bring the cage." The sound of an approaching vehicle broke through the jungle's chaos, an all-terrain vehicle, by the sound of it. They had planned this well, setting up a proper hunting operation. As the ATV's headlights cut through the darkness, I saw more figures emerging from the trees, carrying what looked like industrial-strength steel cables and heavy chains. "Your guardian has a choice," the leader announced. "It can try to save you and walk into our trap, or it can abandon you and live another day. Either way, we win." As if summoned by his words, a deafening roar split the night. The tiger launched itself from a high branch I hadn't even known was there, landing between me and the hunter. But something was wrong. The tiger's movements were sluggish, uncoordinated. "Wondering why your protector seems a bit slow?" the leader laughed. "We've been preparing this area for days. Every water source, every potential prey animal, all laced with a special compound. Not enough to knock it out, just enough to dull its reflexes. Like I said, we've been doing this for centuries." The tiger swayed slightly, its legendary grace compromised by whatever they had used. Yet still it stood its ground, positioning itself between me and the hunters, its blue eyes glowing with defiant fury. "Last chance," the leader said, aiming his rifle. "Surrender now, and we'll make this quick. Fight, and we'll take our time. Either way, your guardian's power will be ours." I looked at the tiger, my guardian, seeing the struggle in its eyes as it fought against the drugs. In that moment, I understood something the journal had tried to tell me: the bond between guardian and chosen one went both ways. If the tiger was willing to die protecting me, I had to be willing to do the same for it. "You're right about one thing," I said, slowly reaching into my pocket where I kept my bear spray. "This ends tonight." Time seemed to slow as I pulled the bear spray from my pocket. The leader's eyes widened in recognition, but before he could shout a warning, I had already pressed the button. The spray caught him directly in the face, and his scream of rage turned into desperate coughing. His rifle went off, the shot going wide into the darkness. The tiger, despite its drugged state, seemed to understand my plan. It launched itself at the nearest hunter, not with its usual grace but with raw, desperate power. The man went down hard, his rifle skittering across the forest floor. "Finish them both!" the leader screamed through his coughing. "Don't let them escape!" The night erupted into chaos. Gunshots echoed through the trees, but the hunters were shooting blind, their eyes watering from the spreading bear spray. I rolled behind a thick tree trunk, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. Through the mayhem, I saw the tiger fighting with everything it had. Even drugged, it was a force of nature. 2 more hunters went down under its massive paws. But I could see the tranquilizers taking their toll. Each movement was slower than the last, each attack less coordinated. A bullet splintered the bark next to my head. I ducked and ran, trying to draw some of the fire away from the tiger. The journal bounced in my backpack as I moved, and suddenly I remembered something I'd read, a passage about guardian bonds growing stronger through shared danger. "Come on," I muttered, pressing my hand against the tree trunk. "If you're really magical, if this bond is real, prove it now." As if in response, the tiger's eyes blazed brighter, that supernatural blue light cutting through the darkness like twin stars. It roared, and this time the sound was different, deeper, more resonant, almost like it was coming from the earth itself. The hunters felt it too. They hesitated, their weapons lowering slightly as primitive instincts warned them that something impossible was happening. The tiger's fur began to shimmer with the same blue light as its eyes. Where the tranquilizer darts stuck out from its hide, they suddenly fell away, pushed out by some unseen force. The tiger shook itself, and the movement sent ripples of energy through the air that I could actually see, like heat waves rising from hot pavement, but blue and somehow alive. "What's happening?" one of the hunters shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "This isn't normal. This isn't what the text described." The leader struggled to his feet, his face red and swollen from the bear spray. "Hold your ground. Its power is manifesting. This is exactly what we've waited for." But he was wrong. This wasn't about power, at least not the kind they understood. As I watched the tiger transform, I finally grasped what the journal had been trying to tell me. The Guardians weren't about power at all. They were about balance, about the connection between humanity and nature. The hunters had spent centuries trying to take that power for themselves, never understanding that it couldn't be taken, only shared. The tiger turned its glowing gaze to me, and suddenly I could feel what it felt, the strength flowing through its muscles, the sharpness of its senses, the fierce joy of running free. More than that, I could feel its thoughts, not in words but in images and emotions. It was showing me what to do. Without hesitation, I broke from my cover and ran straight at the leader. He raised his rifle, but the tiger was already moving, perfectly synchronized with my action. As I ducked under the leader's shot, the tiger leaped over me, its massive form trailing streams of blue light like cosmic flames. The impact when it hit the leader was spectacular. Both went down in a tangle of limbs and light, but only the tiger rose again. The leader lay still, his broken snake amulet smoking slightly where it had shattered against the tiger's glowing chest. The remaining hunters broke. They ran for their vehicle, dropping weapons and equipment in their panic. One of them looked back over his shoulder as he fled, and I saw his face clearly in the tiger's ethereal light. He couldn't have been more than 20 years old, probably the newest recruit to their ancient and misguided cause. "Let them go," I said to the tiger, though I didn't need to speak aloud anymore. I could feel its agreement through our connection. These men would tell others what they had seen here tonight. Maybe some would begin to question the Severance's teachings about the Guardians. Maybe that was how change really happened, not through violence, but through understanding. The tiger's glow began to fade as the danger passed, but our connection remained strong. I could feel its exhaustion, the lingering effects of the drug still in its system. It needed time to recover, somewhere safe where the hunters couldn't find it. I approached slowly, my hand outstretched. The tiger pressed its massive head against my palm, and a flood of images filled my mind: a hidden valley deep in the jungle, a cave behind a waterfall, other guardians waiting, watching, protecting their own chosen ones. It was showing me its home, inviting me to a world few humans had ever seen. But there was something else in its thoughts, a shadow of approaching danger. This battle was over, but the war between the Guardians and the Severance was far from finished. The leader's body was already beginning to dissolve into a strange, dark mist, some final magic of the Severance that would prevent us from learning more about their organization. I checked my camera, relieved to find it had survived the fight. The photos I'd taken, showing the tiger's transformation and the hunter's attack, would be proof of what had happened here. But as I reviewed them, I noticed something strange in the background of one shot: another figure watching from the trees, wearing robes instead of tactical gear, with a complete snake symbol glowing on their chest. The tiger growled softly, and through our connection, I understood. There was another group out there, one that truly understood the Guardian's purpose. And they had been watching me all along, waiting to see if I would prove worthy of the gift I had been given. I looked at my Guardian, its blue eyes now heavy with fatigue but still bright with intelligence and trust. "Whatever's coming, I promise, we'll face it together." Dawn was breaking over the jungle, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, when we heard the helicopters. The tiger's head snapped up, its ears swiveling toward the sound. Through our connection, I felt its alarm. These weren't ordinary patrol helicopters. They carried more of the Severance, and this time they were bringing heavy artillery. "They're not giving up, are they?" I said, though I already knew the answer. The tiger's thoughts flooded my mind with images: more hunters, more weapons, an endless cycle of violence that had persisted for centuries. The Severance would never stop hunting the Guardians, not while they believed they could steal their power. The tiger was still weak from the drugs and the battle, its movements lacking their usual fluid grace. I could feel its pain and exhaustion through our bond, but also its determination. It wouldn't run, wouldn't hide, not while I was in danger. "You need to go," I insisted, showing it mental images of the hidden valley it had revealed to me earlier. "Find the others. Recover your strength." The tiger's response was immediate and firm, a cascade of memories from our shared experiences. The moment I freed it from the trap, its rescue when the bear attacked, our battle against the hunters. The message was clear: we faced things together now. The helicopters were getting closer. Through the canopy, I caught glimpses of black shapes against the dawn sky. The tiger suddenly tensed, its eyes fixed on something in the trees. Following its gaze, I saw them, robed figures moving silently through the jungle, wearing the complete snake symbol we'd seen in the photo. There were at least a dozen of them, carrying what looked like ancient wooden staffs carved with glowing symbols. One of them stepped forward, lowering their hood to reveal an elderly woman with eyes that held the same otherworldly blue as my Guardian's. "Alexander Chen," she said, her voice carrying easily despite the growing noise of the helicopters. "We are the Keepers. For thousands of years, we have maintained the balance between Guardians and their chosen ones. We have watched you since the moment you freed our Guardian, waiting to see if you would prove worthy of the gift." "And have I?" I asked, though the helicopter's roar nearly drowned out my words. She smiled. "You proved worthy the moment you chose to help without expecting anything in return. But now you face a choice that all chosen ones must eventually face. The Severance is coming with weapons that can finish even a Guardian. You can flee with us to safety, or you can stay and fight alongside your Guardian, knowing it will likely mean both your deaths." The tiger moved closer to me, its shoulder pressing against my leg. Through our connection, I felt not just its thoughts but its very essence, ancient, powerful, and impossibly gentle despite its strength. It was showing me something it hadn't before, the moment it had first seen me in the jungle, before the trap. It had been watching me for days, curious about the human who spoke softly to animals and only photographed them with their permission. When it became caught in the trap, it had called out specifically to me, knowing somehow that I would help. The sound of guns being loaded echoed from above. The helicopters were almost directly overhead now, their downdraft beginning to whip through the trees. "There's no choice to make," I said, placing my hand on the tiger's head. "We stay together." The elderly woman nodded, as if I had confirmed something she already knew. She raised her staff, and the other keepers followed suit. "Then let us show you what the true bond between Guardian and Chosen One can achieve." The staffs began to glow with the same blue light I had seen emanating from the tiger during our battle. The light spread, forming a dome over us just as the first shots rang out from above. But the bullets never reached us. They dissolved into harmless sparks against the energy barrier. "The Severance seeks to take power," the woman said, her voice carrying an ancient authority. "But true power comes from connection, from the balance between humanity and nature. Show them, Guardian and Chosen One. Show them what that balance can do." The tiger's eyes met mine, and suddenly I understood. I pressed my hand against its fur, feeling the last traces of drugs and fatigue in its system. Guided by instinct and the Keeper's power, I began drawing those impurities into myself. Pain shot through my body as I took on the tiger's wounds, but at the same time, I felt something else flowing the other way. The tiger was sharing its strength with me, its speed, its power. We moved as one being, the tiger's roar and my voice combining into a sound that shook the earth. The barrier of blue light expanded explosively outward, engulfing the helicopters. Their engines died instantly, but instead of crashing, they floated gently to the ground as if suspended by invisible hands. The Severance members emerged from their vehicles with weapons raised, but they froze at what they saw. The tiger and I stood at the center of a vortex of blue energy, neither fully human nor fully animal but something in between. The Keepers surrounded us, their staffs directing the flow of power. "Your war is over," I said, but it wasn't just my voice. It carried the echo of every Guardian and Chosen One through history. "The power you seek cannot be taken. It can only be shared, and only with those who understand its true purpose." Whether it was our words or the display of power, something changed in the hunters' eyes. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Their leader, a different man from the one we'd fought before, stepped forward and removed his broken snake amulet. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have been misinterpreting the ancient texts all along." The tiger's consciousness brushed against mine, sharing a vision of the future. Humans and Guardians working together to protect the natural world. The Severance transformed from hunters into preservers of balance. But it also showed me the cost of this victory. The massive release of power had drained its strength to a critical level. It needed to retreat to the hidden valley, to sleep and recover among its own kind, and this time I couldn't follow. "Will I see you again?" I asked silently through our connection. The tiger pressed its head against my chest one last time, sharing a final set of images. The jungle at dawn, a specific clearing marked by a tree struck by lightning. 1 year from today, it would meet me there, once it had recovered its strength. As the tiger turned to leave, following the Keepers into the jungle's depths, I felt our connection begin to fade. But it didn't break entirely. Instead, it transformed into something subtle and permanent, a quiet awareness in the back of my mind that I would carry always. I watched until the last flicker of blue light disappeared among the trees, then turned to face the former hunters. There would be work to do, stories to tell, truths to share. But for now, I simply stood in the dawn light, feeling the weight of the journal in my backpack and the lingering warmth of ancient magic in my bones. The tiger had repaid its debt to me 1,000 times over. But in doing so, it had given me something far more valuable than my life. It had given me a purpose. I was no longer just a wildlife photographer. I was a bridge between two worlds. And somewhere in the jungle, a pair of blue eyes watched over me still, waiting for the day we would meet again.